Tonight, we read and discuss Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my old backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness. But still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise up from a past that's rooted in pain. I rise, I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise into a daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. So, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. This is what I like about this one is I don't think this is too much like anything that we've ever read before, in the sense of there's that intrusive I rise and it keeps coming in more and more frequently. And it kind of gives you this battle, like almost kind of like a call and response when it comes to music.
It feels very momentum driven as it gradually builds up. I also feel that with the rhyming, that helps, move from stanza to stanza. And then you feel the crescendo coming to, the climax at the end with the, repeated I rise, I rise, I rise. And you really get that emotional roller coaster throughout the entire poem, I feel like.
So the speaker of this poem, how would you describe this person?
Angry. Powerful. Strong-willed. Yeah.
Okay. And who do you think she's speaking to?
I think everybody. I don't think that there's one group that is maybe forgotten, or if there's one group that she in particularly talking to or not talking to. Probably both groups of individuals, people that are like her and people that are not like her.
Well, and we agree, because she says, carrying on the dreams of my ancestors. She talks about the slaves. This is, to me, clearly an African woman speaker speaking to, and maybe generally, like you said, but I felt like to her oppressor directly. Like anyone, to your point, that might get in her way. She has seen things be twisted. Her words have been changed. She's been beaten down. And this is her warning, like her premonition that you could try, but I'm going to keep coming back, is kind of how I read it.
For sure. But I also think that she is talking on behalf of her peoples, right? She is saying, I'm going to rise up. And so she's telling someone and encouraging maybe another group. So she's telling the oppressors, I'm going to rise up. You're not going to keep me down. But then also telling her own people, I'm going to rise up and you should do the same. You should not allow someone to oppress you and keep you down.
Yeah, I would say there's that line where she says something to the effect of, do you see me with like my head lowered and eyes down? Almost like that was the expectation from the other person, the person that she's talking to, right? It reminds me of if you remember the We Wear the Mask by Paul Laurence Dunbar, where there was like, he talks about these expectations of submissiveness, that we expected a certain reaction right? If you are the person in power and there's a person who you view as lower than you for whatever reason, you might have certain expectations for how they behave. And in this story, this poem, we have Maya Angelou kind of saying like, did you see me doing that? Like, I will rise up and be better. And it kind of, even like the opening paragraph mentions dust. Whenever you hear the word rise and dust, I don't know about you, but I always have that vision of the phoenix, right? From the ashes comes the reborn phoenix, right? It's like, it's kind of like that promise that we're going to take today and make it better for tomorrow.
No matter how much you try to hold us down, try to, squash our uniqueness, our individuality, we are a part of this country and we're going to rise up from the ashes. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. And I like how she ties that emotion together, because it's hard to not feel, as I said at the beginning. And that's something that I think is empowering with poetry that I've learned to appreciate, is it's supposed to make you feel something. And if it doesn't, then that's fine. But I think in this type of poetry, it is supposed to make you feel. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, that's okay. I think she's just trying to evoke emotion to hopefully, inspire.
Yeah, and I think what I felt when I read this is there's this story, it brings into play that interconnectedness that we have, where my actions, other people's actions, they matter for how they impact other people, whose voices we amplify, whose we silence, stuff like that. And I think there's even like that one part in the poem, I think it said, just like moons and like suns, and with the certainty of tides, just like hope's springing high, still I'll rise. And it kind of reminds me of if you ever live like kind of like on the coast or go visit, sometimes you have those charts, like what time is high tide and low tide, because like certain parts of the beach or certain parts that you want to go are only accessible at certain time, right? But it's that idea that the moon and the sun, while they're out there, right, they still impact the tide. They still impact things, right? And in the same way that my actions impact others, right? And I think that's important to think that it's not just a me, that there is an element of we with how we live each day in our lives, essentially.
And that's why I think the poem is very inspiring to the group that she's trying to inspire. Is she has confidence. Why can't they have confidence that I'm doing this? I'm not special or unique. You can do it as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you think her tone is optimistic or pessimistic when it comes to the future?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I think it kind of depends on which stanza. Some of them, she is bitter and angry and maybe a little bit pessimistic, but then other ones feel more hopeful when she's talking about the rise. I feel that things are going to get better as long as people try. Now, if you sit around and do nothing, then nothing's going to happen. But I think it could be either. I think either is my answer. I know that's a cop-out, but...
All right, well, okay, let me hit you with a harder one. So this speaker, she asked the question, does my sexiness upset you? Right? And she talks about the diamond between her thighs, that sort of thing. There's an element of if I'm so ugly, or if you look down upon me so much, why is there that second glance? And I think she recognizes beauty in herself, even if others don't necessarily reinforce it. If others might try to break her down or insult her, there's strength to her. There's strength in her, I would say, identity, even, because I think she knows that there are social pressures at play here, right? In terms of the power structures between an African American and perhaps the oppressor, if you will. And she sees beauty in herself, and nothing's going to change that from other people. So I think that speaks to also not only the confidence, which I would call, in my reading of this poem, optimism for a better tomorrow, but she knows she's going to get there because it's already there. Like, she already sees her beauty and her value. It's just a matter of letting others see it and not feel pressured to oppress it, if you will, break it down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Angelou's very famous for, being anti-hate, and that no matter how much you hate me, for whatever reason you hate me because of what color I am or that I'm a woman, you're not going to keep me down. I'm going to rise up. You're not going to keep me oppressed. And I do like how the poem does kind of take a whole second meaning, and you could, read it 2 or 3 times and read it as, racial, but then you could also read it, in a venue of like sexism, right? We've talked about many times before that Black women were usually the most oppressed and treated the worst of the worst of the worst, during the, 18th and 19th centuries in our country. It's an interesting little twist there at the end when she starts, moving towards that, femininity identity. And I thought that was kind of brilliant how, she almost like sneaks it in there. But you can reread the whole thing from that viewpoint and go, wow, there's a lot more to this than I thought. It's very, very deep.
Well, it's kind of, I would say that maybe there is some form of, I don't know what the right word is, but obligation is what this is the word I'm going to start with. Because she talks about her ancestors, their dreams, their hopes. She's the descendant of a slave, right? And I think that speaks to that generational trauma, but also generational responsibility of how are you going to take what you have and make it better for tomorrow, in a sense.
Kind of wrap everything up. I guess when we get to the end and the final stanza, it does come back, and maybe I will change my answer that it is more positive because it ends on a positive note. That's the last thing you're left thinking, that I'm going to rise up, and it becomes therapeutic and almost like a prayer that I rise up, I rise up, I rise up 3 times. We know how 3 is, very prevalent in literature and poems. So I think it's a very uplifting message that we've been oppressed. I'm going to rise up, and that as long as we keep moving forward together, the future will be better.
Hey, if we get the ever pessimistic Crypto to see the positive light of things, that's worth a like and a subscribe. Hit us up with a little heart emoji down below. If you enjoyed the conversation and aren't sure what to add, we're going to leave a playlist of other Maya Angelou talks down below. Let us know what you think we should cover next. My name's been Una. Thank you for spending time with us today. Peace.
Peace.